and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and with me is Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
It is my miraculous return to Two Words Wolves Pod. Those of you who didn't know or missed that episode or note, I have been out taking care of my newborn baby the past month plus. So I am firmly on team no sleep right now. Ryan and I were just talking about this before we recorded. I'm starting to understand all the fuss people make about how rough the nights can get, the sleeplessness and, all that stuff. I mean, thankfully, there's been some Wolves content and news going around that when I'm up at 3 a.m., kind of holding the baby, I can kind of scroll on my phone in my other hand to read what's going on or what the latest betting odds are, what power forward is going to end up on the Timberwolves. But yeah, Ryan, it really feels like I know you can understand, but like it's one of those things where people are like, oh, you won't get it until it happens to you, right? It's like, oh, you won't understand until you have a mortgage, or you won't understand until you're in grad school or whatever. You won't understand now until you have a kid. And so I am finally starting to understand what it's like to have a kid.
Yeah, I mean, every kid is different. Every parent is different. So I usually, like, if I were to give advice, it's like, don't listen to advice almost, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And so I think it's weird that like some of the cliches apply just 100%. And yep, that's exactly what fatherhood, motherhood is like. And then times it's just like, yeah, I haven't experienced that at all. Like a good example for me is like terrible twos. Like that is not something like my kid was great at 2, and now I feel like at 3 years old I'm starting to experience like the cliche terrible twos. So I mean it's everything is different, but yeah, certainly the sleeplessness when you have a young little one, especially for mom, if she's breastfeeding and having to get up every 3 hours, like that's impossible. But even obviously for dads too, you're you're as involved as, obviously not with that directly, but like you're involved in every waking aspect of your life, and hopefully everyone's job out there gives them enough time off. Here in America, we don't always get that, but each employer is different. But other than that, from a Wolves lens, Leo, how you been? How have you? Wolves have definitely switched things up since last time you and I talked.
Yeah, they have switched it up to say the least. Part of me wishes that, even though I had my kid here at the end of May here, that I would have had her earlier, so this way I could have asked other players like Julius Randle, who is no longer on the team, but he had a girl. I think it was last year he had his baby daughter. And I'll ask some of the other Wolves that were here too that just had their first kid, like Nikhil and all them. Even Jaden. I mean, Jaden has a second kid now to ask him how it is, but it feels like they're dropping like flies here. But it's been interesting because I was not necessarily on team run it back. I think, especially the way the Wolves went down against the Spurs, it was one of those like, all right, things are finally going to have to change. And I thought with Tim Connolly, he's not afraid to make some changes, but I didn't think it would be this sweeping of changes. If anything, we expected maybe Julius Randle to go out, but Nasri was supposed to be the future power forward, or whatever you want to call him, front court player of the Wolves. I mean, damn, he was just featured with Jaden McDaniels in the new rebrand photo shoot. You wouldn't expect that to be a player that they're actively shopping, or at least even considering moving. That said, yeah, when the whole Julius Randle thing went on, I was firmly on team addition by subtraction. I had kind of personally sourced some of my own stats between the last 2 years Julius Randle was here to say how good Jaden McDaniels and how good Naz Reid were in starts when Julius Randle didn't play in the last 2 years, and they were great. And right after that, within 24 hours, the trade Naz Reid, I'm like, great, I just wasted like a day sourcing stats on my own on that. And then, yeah, the player that came back in return, LaMelo Ball, I mean, you can search on Twitter or on Blue Sky my handle and then write in LaMelo afterwards, or any keywords LaMelo or Melo. You will see nothing but LaMelo slander on my timelines, just kind of making fun of him. I was trying to explain to my wife, Ryan, that I don't have anything personally against LaMelo Ball. It's just that what he represented, especially just as a rookie coming in, he won Rookie of the Year, and I was like, oh, he's better than Ant, and all that type of stuff. It's like he was already initially set up to be like anti-Wolves. When he does well, it's kind of like, oh, in your face, like Wolves kind of thing. So obviously it's kind of broken how it's broken, but we'll get into a little bit more. It's been exciting to say the least. But yeah, I mean, Ryan, I've been listening to how you guys have felt, you and Travis and Andrew have been feeling about it, and it's been a lot of different voices, but I feel like a lot of us are going through the same I don't want to say 5 steps of recovery process of like losing Nas, getting LaMelo, but accepting LaMelo. Like we've all kind of gone through that in our own ways.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes your team makes a move and you talk yourself into it a little bit. I kind of remember back when they traded for
Mm.
Dillingham, my initial knee jerk reaction was like, "Oof, this is real bad." Like in a weak draft, they traded all this draft capital for a guy they don't who know with any pick you don't know they're going to be good, and you hear what the front office says about it and they love it, and you talk yourself into it, and then your initial reaction gets borne out right. And I can obviously, the Rudy trade is probably the opposite of that, where knee jerk I hated it, and that's worked out pretty well. um Cat trade, honestly, this is the first trade I of recent memory that I haven't hated on first blush. I did not like the cat trade right away, and got talked into it again. There, it's just kind of what you do, and I don't know. We don't need to relitigate the cat trade. We'll call it neutral to slightly negative, maybe. But um, this one was one of the first that I haven't hated and probably enjoyed on first blush. The and it's not because I think so highly of LaMelo necessarily. It's more just like within the context of where the Wolves were at, where I think we all knew if they were going to make a trade of this level, basically that was going to include their 2033 first round pick, it was going to come with a level of risk. I think we all knew that. And the level of risk that comes with a Melo seems a lot more palatable to me than the level of risk that would come with Kyrie Irving, with John Morant, even with Giannis. And obviously that's like it's cost dependent as well. Obviously, if you traded this exact package for Giannis, you'd do that. But like obviously the Bucks would never do that, and same applies to like Jaylen Brown. That the risk there would be more like contract risk, just because he gets paid more than any of these guys, sans Giannis. So with Lamelo's risk, I just it's kind of the meatheadness of, and we can talk about like exactly how fair or that fair or not that is, and then combine that with like the injury risk, and then just he hasn't really ever hasn't played in the playoffs, so you don't know what that pertains. But like I thought that the Wolves had to shake it up. I was scared that when they made the Julius Randle trade, they were just going to avoid the luxury tax, and that obviously nope, they are going full bore. So yeah, it's a trade that certainly in 2, 3, 5, 10 years we're going to look back at it as another turning point with this organization. But I think it's one that just I've been surprised at the national media perspective on this, which has been pretty negative Wolves wise. I don't understand that. I think this, I mean, just on the court roster, if this was 2K, this would be a home run A+ trade, right? You flip off injuries, you turn off team chemistry, and you roll with it, and that would be an actual absolute perfect fit. Obviously, you can't do that, and that'll be something that we talk about. But I don't, I maybe I'm just like underrating, because like you, if they would have made this exact trade 12 months ago, I would have been like, what the hell is going on? That's awful. And now, and obviously, like things change. And Charlotte's big run toward the end of the last season, and LaMelo was probably the best player in that run. They were darn near the best team in the NBA the second half. So things change, and I love the basketball fit with LaMelo on this roster, and I think the chemistry, the everything else is what they'll have to figure out.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. It's funny because when you talk about the national narrative of it, it was kind of negative about it. And kind of reminded me of one of the, I don't want to say final, but one of the pieces that I wrote before I went on kind of a brief absence there, leave of absence on Candace Hoopus, was about the way that I was going to enjoy watching sports moving forward. Like the open letter I wrote to my own fandom was about like not living and dying with every little win or loss or every little trade, every transaction and things like that. And just trying to remember like, hey, like this should be fun. And a lot of the people that commented on social media or on the comment section had mentioned echoed the same feelings that like, yeah, once they had a kid, they learned like they want to enjoy this experience with the kid. And, you know, when it's fun, you know, have fun with it together. When it's bad, it's kind of, it's okay. It's whatever. It's just a game. And so when some of my friends have asked me, you know, in real life about, you know, how do you feel about the LaMelo trade, where I'm like, look, man, 29 teams don't win the championship every year. Yes, the goal is to win, but if we don't win, at least let's have fun doing it. And having LaMelo on the team, there will be probably a lot of fun times, probably some not so fun times, but overall, like, you know, it's going to be exciting. My daughter will never know the Timberwolves without pre-LaMelo Ball on the team, which is going to be a little interesting. That said, it is something that I have kind of come around to as well too. I mean, you talk about the basketball fit of it. If it was 2K, you turn off the injuries. It would be an insane trade. I play 2K offline in my league mode where basically I have one team and I play them like 30 years into the future. And I create some of my own players and it's a lot of fake, simulated, like, create AI created characters or whatever, auto generated. And one player for the next like 10 years, almost every time I do my league, one of the MVPs every year is LaMelo Ball. Like he is always like on the MVP ladder for those next like the first 10 years I play my league, and so I don't know if that's good or bad that he's good in a video game world, but in the real world, yeah, it's going to be cool because LaMelo's not going to be coming over here as the number one. He may want to be the number one, he may want to wear the number one, but it's going to be pretty clear that Ant is still the number one on the team, and we've never seen LaMelo have to play as the number two. As good as you want to say Colin Knippel was or Brandon Miller has been, it's always been LaMelo's team basically since he's been there. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work out. And if there's a personality that can bring someone else in together, it's going to be Anthony Edwards. I mean, Julius Randle is probably the exact opposite personality as LaMelo Ball. Like, I don't know if there's two further ends of the spectrum than those two guys. And you would imagine that, oh, well, Ant's young, he's kind of funny, kind of was always like kind of joking around with teammates, and you feel like that probably wouldn't gel with Julius, but he managed to gel with Julius. I mean, barring the last couple of months where Julius checked out completely, but Ant was able to get Julius to buy in. And so now you think of the other end. Now you have opposite, really fun-loving, almost too fun-loving guy and character in LaMelo Ball, and you would think, okay, well, is Ant going to be able to kind of reel him in? I think he's going to be able to do that. So I think locker room-wise between him, Finch, and whether Mike Conley comes back or Slow-Mo, whatever veteran we bring back, I think it'll be good for LaMelo to be in a good environment.
Yeah, I think seeing LaMelo as a number two, I think is the biggest factor here in the sense that I look no further than Cat, who obviously was a number two by the time he left Minnesota, but in New York, while he was still number two in New York, like his usage in the way New York used him, especially during this title run, had definitely shifted from he was like the 1B to Brunson's 1A in a lot of ways, or at least that's how it was in Minnesota, where it was like Cat was closer to number one than number three. But like now in New York, I mean, they use him as like a passing hub, but like his usage in the shooting and all that like has gone down to like number three level. So he has taken a usage dip back, and he's flourished and was awesome during that playoff run. And I think for LaMelo, a similar thing where he was the 1A, the everything to Charlotte's offense. And now he goes into a situation where obviously he'll be the point guard and have a lot of the same duties that he did in Charlotte, but especially from a scoring load, he's not going to be relied on to score 25 points a night. Like it's going to be, ideally you just replace all the bad shots with good shots for other people. And so I think if things go poorly, it's going to be because like it's a your turn, my turn sort of thing with Ant. I don't really expect that to be a problem. And if it goes well, it's going to be like both of those guys make each other look better. And at least during the last year in Charlotte, that's what LaMelo was doing. But let's go back to the first trade of the offseason, the first big move of the offseason. And we'll kind of, now that you're rejoining the show here, we'll go kind of move by move until we get to present day here. But first, howl or foul. The Julius Randle era for the Wolves was a failure. Howl or foul, Leo?
I'm going with foul. Now, I just talked about earlier that it did end ugly in the way that he was kind of checked out. He had some good games here or there, but for the most part, it didn't seem like he really cared if the Wolves won or lost. He played like he gave up, really, especially the last 3 months after the trade deadline. And not only did that hurt the Wolves on the court and it ended their season, but it tanked his value as well, too, in the point where the Wolves had to essentially salary dump him. I think he defied, though. So that said, I think he defied most everyone's expectations of how he was going to do when he was traded here. By and large, everyone thought that it was a terrible trade because Julius Randle sucks. Julius Randle can't play in the playoffs, and that the Wolves were certainly taking a step back. And yes, there was some injury luck in the 2025 postseason run, but you can't say that he wasn't a key cog to be able to take down the Lakers. I mean, he guarded Luka as well as you could have asked anyone to guard Luka in isolation. He took it to LeBron when he had the ball in his hand. He took out Jimmy. I mean, he made Draymond say that he got outplayed. There's a former Defensive Player of the Year saying he got outplayed by Julius Randle. And yeah, I mean, you look at how it started too. The first 3 months of this season looked really good. When Ant was kind of in and out with injuries, and Julius looked like he was still riding that high from the playoffs. And so, yes, he fell apart against the Thunder. Yes, he fell apart against the Spurs. I mean, he wasn't the only one that fell apart against those two teams. But with that said, I think given the expectations of how the Julius Randle era was expected to go, I would say that it wasn't a failure that just ended as like a net neutral. Like at first I would have said it was a success, but yeah, just the way it ended obviously kind of brings it back down to net neutral for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to say how that it was a failure, mostly, and it's not even to fully blame Randall, who I think is, on some small level, getting scapegoated toward the end of this Timberwolves tenure, even if certainly the kind of the attitude post this last deadline is just not something you can have from your second best offensive player on a team that's trying to win the title. But this was the main guy they got back for Karl Anthony Towns, a guy that we just saw win the title as the second best player on a team that just ran through the playoffs. I get, obviously, Cat's salary reduced his trade value a lot, and really the Knicks were probably the only team that could withstand that level of salary. So you understand why Cat's trade value was what it was. But still, I think I'm saying this I'm separating out the LaMelo trade from just the Randle trade, in the sense of what happened was they salary dumped Randle and they were fine getting nothing back. Even they moved back, what was it, 6 spots from the end of the first round to the start of the second round, and worked out because it sounded like they got the same guy they probably would have picked in the first round anyway. But the main guy they got back for Cat, they had to salary dump. I think that's a failure, and we can break down why it happened. I think the fit with Rudy, not even blaming either guy, was bad. Was really, really bad. They never figured that out, and the fact that they were able to win 3 playoff series in 2 seasons with that front court is probably just impressive. I think I refer to it as brute force. If you get an algebra problem as a kid, instead of carrying the X over and make it isolate, you know what I'm saying? Solving the actual equation, you just start plugging in 1, 2, 3 until you find the correct answer. That's what it felt like these last 2 Timberwolves teams were. They just kind of brute forced their way through the playoffs with talent, and eventually they ran up against a team with either more talent or presented a matchup angle they weren't able to solve, and because of the poor fitting front court, the Wolves just had no chance, and that's why you saw these gigantic flameouts the past 2 seasons in the playoffs. At least, obviously you lose to the Spurs in 6, but they games 5 and 6 were routes. So I think in that sense it is a failure, but I think similar to kind of the Dillingham trade, which is obviously far more of a stark failure. You rip the parachute out and you save yourself at least a little bit with the Ayo Dosunmu trade and now contract extension. You do that a little bit with this LaMelo deal, especially now if you do kind of loop that back in where you're trading Randall, Naz Reid, all the draft capital for LaMelo and the Josh Green expiring. Now it does kind of, the Cat trade makes more sense, even if you didn't mean to, but you punted on 2 seasons just given the fit on the roster. Again, not fully on Julius or Gobert. All these people deserve blame for the front court not working. Julius, Rudy, Ant, Finch, Connolly. There's no, I don't think it's fair to blame any one person more than the other on that. But it kind of feels like with this Melo trade, you've dug yourself out of, there's 2 routes to view it. That you finally dug yourself out of this hole that was started way back when with the Gobert trade, where you give up all this draft capital. You knew the financials made you trade Towns, and then your financials are still in a rough spot, so you trade for Dillingham. That doesn't work. Zach Lowe on the Bill Simmons podcast described it as chasing their tail. The Wolves, each progressive move is just trying to make up for the last one. So that'd be the negative way to put it. And I think maybe in the more positive way to put it would be they've resolved all of those issues to me, and now they have their team, they have their They talked about this. There's 26 and under core. Well, we thought that included Nas. It includes LaMelo instead of Nas. So yeah, that's my long roundabout way of saying that I do think the Julius Randle quote unquote experiment didn't end up working out, but they've saved themselves from it becoming a bigger issue for years to come. And now it'll be on, we'll talk about the LaMelo trade, it'll be on making sure that works out instead of this Julius trade, which the first one, that just, it didn't end up working.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we talk about Julius Randle era, I mean, I think obviously it's easy to really focus on the main player that was coming back, all NBA, all-star player in Julius Randle, and just really kind of focus on how did he work out. But when we talk about his era, I mean, you have to include Dante and you have to include Johan, which obviously is incomplete. I mean, you could argue that Dante's injury was a reason. One of the main reasons why the Wolves struggled, not having him was the reasons they struggled against the Spurs so much. And so, yeah, you know, it's kind of like if you say the Mike Conley, the D'Lo trade was only for Mike Conley, and that you kind of leave out that they got Nickeil Alexander-Walker and what he turned into, where it's like, no, that was actually just as important, if not more important, than what Mike Conley was, for as good as Mike was for his earlier years. But you know, we'll move on from there. We'll, as we kind of fold that book closed and move forward. I did want to ask you if you had anything off the top of your head. Did you have like your single most memorable Julius Randle moment, whether it's on or off the court? For me, I'll start with myself. My favorite moment, basketball-wise, was it was a buzzer-beating three-pointer he made at the end of the first half of Game 5 against the Warriors. And it was the one where he hit and he kind of did that funny like step back dancing, kind of like a weird like side step, like shimmy going backwards. And the camera pans to Steph Curry on the bench just kind of shaking his head in disbelief. And that was kind of that closeout game against the Warriors. I think at that point was like, dude, like Julius Randle is finally rising in the playoffs in a way that, you know, no one thought he could. And I think that was definitely like the high moment for me in the Randle era for sure. What about you?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. Probably, well, off the court. I mean, this is technically on the court, but Kaiden, his son, just
Oh, yeah.
being at all the games courtside, pumping up his dad, like that was really cool. I mean, it's important to. Yeah, obviously, none of us, even those that cover the team, don't fully know these people, but like from what we can tell and from like just interacting with Julius on a very small level, like seems like a good family, seems like good people. So it's a bummer that obviously they're not around the Wolves organization. It's certainly a bummer that that their time didn't really end the way any of us wanted it to. But on the court, I would say I believe it was like the first month or two that they acquired Julius. He hit a game winner against the Suns. That did feel like I think he had kind of struggled up until that. It wasn't. It would to me. It was just like new team struggles before that. Like it wasn't anything anyone was really fretting about or led to anything. But it was good to see. It was kind of like a welcome to Minnesota type of moment. He hits the 3-pointer against the Suns. Well, there was I think Devin Booker felt like he pushed off, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, pushed Josh Okogie, Wolves legend.
Yeah. Well, Wolves need a power forward. Maybe that's an answer. But I think that was probably just the biggest memory. And probably it's fair to point out, and you mentioned part of it was against the Lakers and Warriors last season in the playoffs. He was very, very good. Maybe probably their best player in that series. Like you mentioned, Draymond called him out as outplaying him. And I think Draymond said the only other time someone had done that was the 19 finals with
Siakam,
Pascal Siakam and the Raptors. So, like I said, I think to a certain extent, Julius kind of got an unfair rap down the stretch of his career, or his Wolves career, but on some level, he also did that to himself with the way he acted and played in the playoffs and down the stretch of the regular season. So, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I mean, personally, I think he's going to play really well in Brooklyn, and I think almost single-handedly, Julius will keep them from being one of the 3 worst teams, which will probably be Brooklyn's win-loss record goals, just to get out of this new relegation zone with the draft lottery. I think Julius and probably Michael Porter Jr. combined and all their young guys will be able to easily dig them out of that hole. So I kind of think Brooklyn did a pretty good job with this trade, even if the Wolves, if I like the Wolves angle of it too.
Yep. I mean, best of luck to him. You know, he'll get to go back towards New York, not necessarily for the Knicks this time, but for Brooklyn, and, you know, we'll wish him well. So we'll move on to the LaMelo Ball trade. So we kind of talked about it earlier, but last season he played an almost career best, his second place in games played in the season with 72 games. And as we all know, LaMelo played about 28 minutes per game on 72 games last season with the Hornets. So how or foul for you, Ryan? LaMelo Ball should follow on the 28-minute per game plan that Charlotte had him on.
I'm gonna say foul, just because I think you gotta know what you have. You gotta know what you can expect from him from a games played sense. What Because you're gonna need him to play 35, 40 minutes in the playoffs. So I think you really gotta just play him. But ultimately, the Lamella injuries I think is the biggest potential worry for this trade. If he can't, if he, I mean, this last season he was healthy, like you mentioned, at low minutes. If he can't play, 65 games a year at 30 plus minutes a night, relatively consistently, like that's going to be a big, huge, worrisome part about this trade. And certainly come the playoffs, like if they can't count on LaMelo to play pretty much every game in the playoffs, that's going to be a worry. I have my doubts. I just think generally with injuries, guys are injury prone until they're not, especially young guys. I mean, you can point out counter examples to this. Like, just seems like Embiid, it's more than just luck. I mean, it is luck, but like, there's something about his body, unfortunately, that doesn't allow him to be healthy. But like for most guys, I just think like it just because they were injured 2-3 years ago doesn't mean they're going to be injured 2-3 years from now. And so maybe that ends up being incorrect. But I think if, like I mentioned, if you're betting on all the risks the Wolves could have taken this offseason, if the main risk they ended up with in their lap was if a 25-year-old, I think that's how old he'll be at the start of next season, if a 25-year-old guard can stay healthy, like that's a pretty good risk to take on. It's not that you want that, but like, I don't know. I'm relatively optimistic that they can keep him healthy, and obviously they have a great training staff, and they have to kind of monitor things a bit more closely than they would with maybe a player that they've had before. But I would still try to play him a regular rotation of minutes, more or less, from the start of the season. What do you think?
I'm going opposite. I'm going to how that the Wolves should be following a 28-minute plan. Now, I say this because I feel like you gotta, walk before you can run. And lower leg proverbs aside, like you mentioned, the Wolves did win the officially called Joe O'Toole David Craig Athletic Training Staff of the Year award in the NBA, which is given to the best training staff, medical and strengthening, all of them. And so I do trust them to do their job. I assume that Conley had obviously probably talked to them. I mean, the Hornets are a team that is not necessarily the model of consistency and training staff and player health. You think about what happened with the Mark Williams trades to the Lakers, which the Lakers flagged and vetoed, saying that Mark Williams wasn't healthy. I don't know if that's the Lakers thing or the Hornets thing, but either way, I would imagine the Wolves know what they're getting themselves into. I do agree with you that this is a long-term investment, and so that eventually you do need to play more than 28 minutes per game. But you have to protect it as well too. You don't want to just ride the wheels off as soon as you get him here. You'll have to hopefully build up to that, prove that he can be healthy. I mean, the Wolves are not a team that's rich in health right now. I mean, obviously Dante's out for probably most, if not all, of next season. Anthony Edwards hopefully has a summer to get right. Same with Ayo Dosunmu. He was banged up at the end of the year as well too. So they can't risk losing another player who already kind of has a rickety health record on him. Something I did want to bring up though, as far as his health, was on the Canis Hoopus comments section. One of our comment posters, Fish Got Zombies, he's been on Canis Hoopus for a long time. He posted this, and basically he said that, and I quote, "I did some reading up on LaMelo's ankles. He was reluctant to wear ankle braces because they hurt. Having glass ankles myself, I remember needing to wear old leather lace-up ankle braces just to get through a season. They hurt like son of a bitch, but it was very hard to sprain your ankle. So apparently sometime in 2024, so 2 seasons ago, LaMelo gave in. He started wearing special ankle braces. He talked to Steph Curry about wearing the braces because Steph also had ankle issues. Then at the end of the 24-25 season, the team had shut LaMelo down for arthroscopic surgery on an impingement in his ankle. And so last season, after the ankle surgery, he wore ankle braces and only missed 10 games. So I think, again, this isn't official sourced, medical record on LaMelo's ankles. But if that is true, I do feel good that, yeah, he will and should be able to play more than that. I was looking at the playing game as well too, Ryan. I don't know if you know this off the top or you looked, but in the first playing game in the was it the 9-10 matchup it was, or
Yep.
yeah, they played the Miami Heat. Do you know how many minutes LaMelo played in that? I believe it was an overtime game.
Overtime games, so probably like 43.
He played 40 minutes. He played 40
Yeah.
minutes, which is obviously a lot more than 28, but he was a plus 15 in a 1 point game, in a 1 point victory, plus 15. And then against the Magic, they ended up getting blown out by 21, so he got benched early, but he did play 25 minutes before he got benched with all the other starters, and he was a -9. But again, they ended up losing by 31. So I think he is capable of playing more. Obviously, he didn't play great in those 2 games. He did hit a game winner against the Heat, and he did score 30 points in it, not terribly efficiently. But again, we go back to him being not the number one. He's not going to be forced to have to play 35 minutes a game right off the bat, because I mean, when it comes closing time, Ant's the one that's going to be there. Ant's the one that they're going to rely on to play heavier minutes. So I think this should allow for a little bit more time for everyone talks about LaMelo's on-off stats, or his teammates' on-off stats when LaMelo was there, and how much better they were when he was on versus how bad they were when he was off. I think that won't be the same thing with the Wolves. They're not going to be awful when LaMelo's not on. Obviously they'll probably be better when he is on, but they still do have Ant, they still have Jaylen, they have a lot more reliable players that the Wolves can rely on when LaMelo's sitting. So I think it'll help him be able to manage his minutes.
I also think part of it is just like these years where LaMelo is missing a bunch of games. Charlotte was not incentivized to get him back on the court, and it's not to say that they were making up injuries. It's just like they would have his health recovery would have been different if they were trying to get him on the court to maximize their the amount of wins instead of incentivized to rest him extra to get some extra losses on their record. So I think that's part of it too. And it's not to say that the injuries are the biggest concern with this trade. I like I already said, if you flip off injuries, to me this is an A+ trade for the Wolves, but you can't. It's not real life. And so they'll need to do some sort of I don't know what they can do. Obviously, we don't have access to his medical records. No, obviously, nor should we. But like, I think I'm confident that because they've done this. Like, the Wolves play their guys, like, just straight up. That when their guys are healthy or mostly healthy, they play. And so I think that will be the expectation with LaMelo, and how they're able to do that and be one of the more healthier teams in the NBA. I don't know correlation, causation there, but like, they're clearly doing something right because their guys largely stay healthy. And so I think until proven otherwise, I think we can assume that they'll do their best with LaMelo here. And I think him coming off a healthy season is the best sign that we can have. But
yeah. I do want to add as well too, Ryan. I mean, on that point of, was LaMelo actually injured versus was he being like kind of benched, just because they weren't trying to win any games? I mean, I looked this up, Ryan. So other than this last like current lottery, you look at the lottery of 2025, lottery of 24, lottery of 2023. The Hornets were bottom 3 twice and bottom 4 once. I mean, so you tell me. I mean, like, yeah, maybe they weren't shutting him down for taking purposes, but I mean, there's a lot of other teams that have, benched, quote unquote, unhealthy players or players that are recovering to help their lottery chances as well too. So, you got to imagine that. Did the Hornets lose so many games because LaMelo was hurt, or did the Hornets lose so many games because they weren't willing to play LaMelo more? So, anyways, yeah, we'll never know. We'll never get the answer to that, but that is a valid point you bring up.
Absolutely. Well, we kind of will know to a certain extent because we're going to see in the next 12 months how often he plays, how often he sits, and what. I mean, that's just what I'm looking forward to most come late October when the Wolves start playing regular season games. Just the fit between LaMelo and Ant. I mean, we already assume it's going to be fairly good, but can you get it to A+ level? And just kind of I'm just interested maybe for the preseason to just like sit in a press conference and hear LaMelo talk about his game and just everything. Cause I don't really, beyond the basketball games, I don't really know much about LaMelo Ball. I guess I do cause of his father and his brothers and all that, yeah. And everything that's,
you watched Ball in the Family, I bet, didn't you, on Facebook?
His brother getting arrested in China and the president of the United States having to bail him out in the first term of our current president, I believe. So a lot going on with the family there.
Yeah, I do want to add that in 2020, so when it was COVID time and they were doing the draft and all the interviews were done via Zoom, that's actually when I officially, quote unquote, started doing NBA media. And I was doing in the draft interview rooms and I was able to ask some questions. And so I remember the three guys I really want to talk to was Killian Hayes, um, Tyrese Halliburton and LaMelo Ball. And so I was able to get into each of those draft rooms on Zoom. And I asked each of them different questions, varying amounts. LaMelo took about 5 seconds with my question. Everyone else took at least like a minute or two. And I remember after that, I was so out on LaMelo. I was like, dude, this guy does not care. He took his interview in a gym, and he was like, half of his face was showing, like in the camera. He answered most questions with like, yeah, just I don't know, like that. And I was like, okay, seriously, this guy. I mean, again, and you think about his dad being front and center, and kind of what happened to Leangelo. It felt like Lonzo was the only sane one. And so, anyways, point being is that I was like not in on LaMelo, even just right from the get go, where I was like, dang, is this really how NBA media works? But it's like, no, LaMelo was just kind of 101 for better or worse in the way that he did it. So, but yeah, hopefully he's grown up. I mean, that was a long time ago. That was 6 years ago. I didn't have a dog then. I didn't have a kid then. I was still working at a different place then. Two Words Wolves Pod was not in existence yet. So yeah, it was a long time ago.
Hey, maybe you asked a bad question. Who knows, right?
It could have been me. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like I have a hard time like really diving into like the psyche of the player,
Yeah.
just because it's like you don't know. Like, I'm interested to see, like, obviously he has a reputation in terms of just kind of being a reckless player, I would say. I'm curious to see if that's real, if that's or just that's perception, or if it was real. Like, people grow. I'm sure. Like, I'm 30. Like, I'm certainly different than I was at 25, and at 25, I would have said I'm way different than I was at 20 or 19 or whatever. And so I think that obviously applies to these guys, maybe even more so than those of us that don't play professional basketball for a living. So yeah, I'm interested in that, and we'll obviously wait a couple. We'll see if last year Ant and Cup and Nas parachuted into the summer league. Maybe we get that get that again and get our first Ant LaMelo interaction. But let's keep moving down the spectrum of moves here, which I guess this is out of timeline because they re-signed Io before they made the LaMelo trade. But instead of acquiring starting power forward Howler Fowl, the Finch should start Io DeSumo, push Shaden McDaniels to the power forward spot, Howler Fowl, and doing that versus signing a starting level power forward.
I'll say Howell. So barring an unforeseen signing that kind of comes out of nowhere, just like the LaMelo Ball trade, you have to roll out your best five guys. So you got to start your best five guys. And Jaden at power forward should help with some of the foul trouble that he gets when he's usually guarding the primary initiator and he's getting baited into fouls by Jalen Brunson or some of those kind of wily veteran guys that can really get them into foul trouble. And so I think him being more in the front court should help with that. Jaden's also a great rebounder when he's kind of focused and he puts his mind to it. I mean, we saw that in times and stretches in the last couple of years where he, had that infamous quote that, I just realized I was bigger than most of the people out there. You just go out there and go snag them. And so, yeah, I mean, let's kind of put that to the test. I mean, it's not like we have a better option at this current moment right now. And again, that allows for more minutes at the guard positions for Io or for, maybe Jaylen Clark spot minutes or whether Bones comes back, whatever the case is, that should help. I would be interested, though, in signing like a affordable, connective utility power forward to come off the bench. I mean, obviously, Slow-Mo is the first one that comes to mind. I think I've seen a lot of people talk about like, oh, well, the Wolves still have Slow-Mo. It's like, no, technically we don't. He's not on contract right now. Like he's an unrestricted free agent, so he can sign anywhere else. He could go back to San Antonio where he got drafted. I mean, shit. But someone like him, Nick Batum, he did not get offer from the Clippers, so he's an unrestricted free agent, albeit he's old, but he can't shoot, he can't pass, he can't speak French. So good for Rudy, and also good for Johan. So, and then there's a guy maybe like Kendrick Williams, who is, again, the Thunder had to cut payroll, and he was one of the guys that was cut loose. He's a guy that has been on the Thunder for a long, long time. If you remember, he's a guy that Rudy Gobert once got a flagrant foul for tripping him intentionally and getting into a fight with him, but he's got that little mud flap mullet going in the back, but he can hit threes. He can defend. He's played at a high-quality team for many years now. So one of those guys off the bench could be helpful to me. Those are more kind of like the do-it-all utility power forwards. But, that said, I think Jaden starting at the 4 as of right now makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm going to go Howell at the Jaden starting at the 4 starting lineup. Just because looking at like their cap sheet and stuff, I don't see the path to acquiring like a starting level caliber starting power forward this offseason. I guess the one exception to that would be if they wanted to take this Josh Green $14.6 million expiring contract and basically stretch it or waive and stretch him. So you're spreading that money out. But like, I don't really think they want to staple like $4.5 million, $5 million of dead cap money to next year's and 2 years books. Like I don't think that that's very smart. I think if you're not able to do anything with this Josh Green contract, I think you're much better off just letting it expire on your books and using that potential salary flexibility either at this deadline if a deal comes up, or just having more money to spend next year. I mean, in terms of like just pure free agency signings, if they re-sign Mike Bones and Kyle Anderson, they're basically right at the second apron, which is now their hard cap because of the deals that they've made. And so you literally don't have anyone. If you're able to somehow get rid of trade Josh Green, which the Wolves don't have any. They have one tradable draft asset, which is a top 50 protected second round pick. So that's nothing. That like a top. If it lands 45th in the draft, the Wolves don't get it. Like that, it's not an actual asset. The Wolves, so like, I don't see how they're trading. The only way they're trading Josh Green to me is that they're taking in future money. So basically, an even worse contract than Josh Green. And again, to my wave and stretch point, I don't see that really. You want to do that because, again, you're taking in a bad contract. I don't know if the Wolves. So all of that to say, it's very complicated, and maybe this front office can pull a rabbit out of their hat with this Josh Green contract. All that said, I don't see how they can add more than like someone making, if it's just a signing, they don't really have space to sign someone for more than like $3.5 million. At least that's what my current spreadsheet shows. So I'm not seeing where they're going to sign this this starting caliber power forward. So to your point, just play your 5 best guys. And it's not to say you bring in someone and on a certain night you're playing a team that's playing 2 bigs and you need more size than Jaden or Io. Like, yeah, like you can start that guy. But I think what starting Jaden at the 4 also does is let him get off ball a little bit more, which I think he's shown to be an even better defender off ball than he is on ball. You give Io some of the reps guarding the other team's best player. Maybe Ant gets a little bit more of the premier defensive assignment, with, in theory, his offensive load, at least in terms of double teams, kind of lessening. Hopefully you can get more out of him defensively. So I'm in on this start Jaden at the 4 kind of deal. But it's less about like the actual basketball fit of it and more just about, I'm a little bit dubious that they're going to be able to add at least this offseason. Next offseason with this Josh Green contract coming off the books, I think that like now you start to have a little bit more space. Maybe Rudy has a player option for that season. Maybe they do what they did with him, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, where they give him an extension, but it lowers his contract for next year. So now you're creating even more financial space and retaining Rudy for the future. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I saw this on my social media. I didn't get to listen through to Dane Moore's most recent podcast episode with Britt Robson, but he had a tweet that said that, post Ja Morant trade, that Memphis is putting up quite a list of power forwards on their team. They have Cam Boozer, Kareem Lopez, so 2 rookies, Isaiah Stewart, who they just traded for, Jeremy Grant, who they just traded for. Then they have Chris Murray, they just traded for. Then they have mainstays of Santi Aldama, Gigi Jackson, and Taylor Hendricks. And I guess Britt Robson had mentioned Santi Aldama as a guy that he'd like the Wolves to try and target somehow if possible. And I agree. I love Santi Aldama. My funny story about Santi Aldama was I was watching his draft. I think it was the 2021 draft, I think it was. And I was watching at my best friend's house, and his wife, who doesn't really watch basketball at all, was kind of in the room while we were watching it. And Santi Aldama went, I think it was like last in the first round. And she looked up and she's like, "Ooh, who's that guy?" And me and my best friend, for the longest, I was like, "Uh-oh, Santi Aldama's going to steal your girl," kind of thing. And so it's been a internal like running joke with us. And He's turned out to be quite the player, though. He's kind of Nas Reed-ish in that he's a power forward who can kind of handle the ball decently. He can shoot, and he's kind of multi-talented, multifaceted use out there. And he is a guy that's making about 17 million a year this year, and I think he has an option for the following year, which I like to look at things cap-wise. That's about 10% of the cap, but again, that kind of falls inside. If you can get rid of Josh Green money and kind of see where you can go with that, perhaps Santi Aldama could be a guy that's folded in. That's a guy that I like, but yeah, I do agree with you. That's going to require other teams to have to play ball with us to make that happen.
I mean, I think like my question with that would be with really anything Memphis is like, why are they taking in Josh Green's salary? What are you incentivizing them? So yeah, like with Santi Aldama, maybe which I don't know why they would, but like if they're just ready to move off of his salary by any means necessary, that would be the way. Maybe, but it's still in that case, I'm guessing you'd have to staple Terrence Shannon Jr. onto that trade, maybe both financially, but like just value wise to give them something, a reason to do the trade. And now you're getting into the like, I'm not sure that's there for the Wolves to really, to me, if I don't really feel comfortable. Even I'm probably lower on Terrence Shannon than the average Timberwolves person, but like to me, there's just like, with any deal, you got to make sure, especially if you're taking back future money, like, does it make sense versus just almost like, yes, next year's team will be better than this year's team because of these salaries, but let's not, we're going to have a good amount to sign next year, like a good full tax, non-taxpayer. We have trade things we can do. Like, let's not ruin that just to make sure that we have the best team possible this year. Like, this team should be really good for the next 2, 3, 4 years. Like
right.
So that's kind of where I'm at with that in reference to the starting lineup. But I like the idea of trading for Memphis. It's just like with any of these deals, I'm just kind of like, but why is the other team doing that? Why is the other team taking this $14.6 million Josh Green contract that for us Wolves fans, we're all trying to get rid of it. So if we're all trying to get rid of it, why is the other team taking it? And so I guess future money would be the answer there. But I guess time will tell if the Wolves are able to do that. Lastly here, Jaylen Clark signs a 3-year, $10 million contract. So that's roughly about $3 million a year. I think it starts just under 3 and then goes up. It starts above 3 million and goes up to about 3.5 in the last year. So he's getting paid roughly about $700K above the league minimum every year. Kind of similar to the Ayo Dosunmu extension. I'm kind of guessing if they wanted to squeeze Jaylen Clark and get him on the minimum, I'm sure they could. Obviously, you probably don't get a 3-year deal in that case. But I think with a lot of these moves, they're just like, what's an extra $1 million to us, even in these cap deals? Like, just get let's secure our guy. So they get Jaylen Clark back at $3.25 million a year. Again, just above the league minimum. So you can't really get him for any cheaper than that. But Howl or foul, Finch needs to commit to playing Jaylen Clark at least 15 minutes per game next season.
I'm going with Howl on this, and I do feel like there is a qualifiers that he's going to have to prove it first, though. Not just like, oh, yeah, just 15 minutes for no reason to you right off the bat. Chris Finch was actually pretty quick to hook him, if you didn't watch all Wolves games, hook him off the court if anything, it wasn't even for his offensive shortcomings. It was for defensive mistakes that he was making, getting back cut, not boxing out, little things like that he wasn't doing. Finch was getting pissed at, and he would hook him. And so he's got to prove that he's gotten better on that end. The offensive side, we know that he has, weaknesses there. He's not a consistent shooter. He has potential, but he didn't quite show. He kind of took a step back last year. Obviously, he's kind of shown a little bit of a float game. He draws a lot of fouls, which is good. But other than that, I think if he's able to prove it, he should be able to step into like Bones Highland or Mike Conley minutes from last year. I understand that there's a lot of people ahead of him in the pecking order. He's not a guy that is commanding a lot of salary that is necessitating that he plays 15 minutes a night. But he's a person that knows the system and that Chris Finch knows what he can and can't do. And I know there's that infamous the Wolves are X and X record when he plays 15 minutes or more. And I think that that's not baseless. I definitely think that there's some truth to it. And the Wolves are going to need some defensive talent. I mean, they not to say that Naz Reid and Julius Randle were great defenders, but LaMelo Ball isn't on his own either, and so they're going to need a little bit more talent out there on the court on that end of the way. And I'm not saying Jaylen Clark can guard power forwards, but he can certainly guard small forwards and maybe some of the smaller power forwards out there. I would like to see him match up against those skinnier power forwards, say like a Chet Holmgren or something. I feel like Jaylen Clark could really get under them. So maybe in spot minutes he's not starting, by any means, not the first guy or second guy off the bench, but I think 15 minutes should be reasonable if he can prove it.
Yeah, I'm going to go foul on Clark playing 15 minutes a night, just mostly because they already have probably 8 guys in front of him in the rotation. If I were to count them out, the starting 5 we've talked about, sixth man would be this theoretical power forward they're adding, and then 7 and 8 are Berenger and Shannon, who I think almost certainly have to play more than Clark. So that's already 8 guys. So it's not to say that, like you mentioned, if Clark earns it because he did XYZ, that he shouldn't be in the rotation. I'm just more thinking night in, night out. I don't think Clark will be or should be a guy necessarily that has to play 15 minutes. I think it's going to be about how is he playing lately, what is the matchup, all that good things. But I think for him to stay on the court, it's going to be about fouling. Can he defend without fouling? Can he learn how to defend different types of defenders, not just guys that make sense for him, but like just bigger guys, smaller guys, faster, slower, all that good stuff. And then I think obviously the jump shot is the most simple thing. You mentioned the float game, and yes, he's shown that. It's almost kind of the worrying part about his game, because a lot of times he'll pass out of an open or semi-open three-pointer to get to that floater. And every time I'm just like, okay, yeah, it went in. But like the play called for you to shoot that corner, the half decent corner 3-point look in the corner. Like, you kind of got to have the confidence to shoot that, because if you don't, the defense is just not respecting you. And we saw that this last season. No matter how many threes he made, the percentage he was shooting, the defenses just weren't respecting him from deep. And that's kind of it's not even about how many you make. It's about, can you get the defense to respect you? Julius Randle is the same thing. He obviously didn't have a great percentage, but like, the defense just never respected his 3-point shot. And so that caused all sorts of other issues. So for me, Jaylen Clark is the same thing. Can you get the defense on some level to respect your 3-point shot? And obviously that becomes easier now with only one non-shooter, Rudy, on the court, at least in the starting unit. And you have LaMelo and you have Ant, and you have all these guys that can space the floor. But I do think it'll come down to the jump shot. And like you mentioned, if he does able to find that jump shot or a better place in this lineup, yes, he's definitely a guy that can play 50 minutes a night, and that's probably a good sign because they got him on a pretty affordable deal here.
Yep, I'm with you 100%.
Awesome. Let's move on to Apex Alpha, or leaders of the pack. We'll call it this month, this offseason so far. Leo, who is your leader of the pack?
Weirdly, I'm going to go with Rudy Gobert. He just recently turned 34 a couple days ago, and he's going to have his hands full. He's going to have to manage a defense of scrawnier guys than last year, a smaller team. But I feel like this summer, I mentioned earlier, we came into it thinking that he could be on the trade block, Julius for sure, and then probably Rudy next for any assets. But instead, he's the one rotation big that actually remained. It was Naz and Julius that went out, and so all of a sudden, he's the last guy left on the block that's returning. Him and his, countrymen, Johan Berenger and Rocco Zakarski, 2 teenagers that are still playing behind him on the depth chart. So I do think that he does come out kind of the winner of it, that the Wolves are showing that they're invested in him. And also they bring in a guy that is probably going to be the best point guard that fits his game ever on the Wolves. You can even maybe go all the way to maybe when Mike Conley was closer towards his late prime in Utah, or maybe when Joe Ingles was closer to a real NBA player, that he had some pick and roll guys that could get him the ball handlers. But LaMelo is kind of on a whole different level, and he's just not even fully in his prime yet. And so Rudy gets to play with that. So I think it's a vote of confidence by the front office.
Yeah, and I think looking at the moves that Charlotte has made, it makes sense that they would value Nas over Rudy. I think they've kind of we've seen the Bridges deal, which glad Miles Bridges isn't playing with Nas Reed anymore or at all. That's a good sign for me, like that. Um, I think the Hornets are kind of retooling, so it makes sense they'd like the future asset with Nas, who's signed for 4 more seasons after, uh, including this upcoming one. And for the Wolves, maybe it just makes sense to have Rudy over Nas in the sense of like Rudy's just flatly a better player than Nas is right now. Um, and I think the fit with LaMelo and Rudy makes just a whole bucket of sense. Like obviously the Julius departure is almost separate, but like I think I think LaMelo as much as anything can help mitigate the Rudy issues in the playoffs because the defensive or the issues with Rudy in the playoffs have not been defense or like he's been a quality defender. It's just the offense bogs down too much with him on the court, and so and especially against San Antonio, that was the big thing. They just could not. Obviously, the 7.5 foot French dude is a big reason, but like they were just not able to score half court or otherwise with Rudy on the court, and so like you mentioned, I think this will be a really good step for Rudy. And if it's not, and Rudy struggles again in the playoffs, well, then the Wolves will have to pivot again. But my apex alpha is Tim Connolly. I thought the past couple off seasons have been pretty brutal for the Wolves president. What 2 seasons ago was really kind of disastrous, especially the Rob Dillingham trade where they gave out a pick and a swap for a player that, at least to this point, has not proven much of anything. And then the Karl Anthony Towns trade. I think watching the Knicks win the title on some level, even if I don't think that trade is a disaster or maybe even is still working out for them, like on some level, they didn't believe Cat could do this. They did not believe Cat could become this type of player, and he did. So I guess on at least some level, they were wrong about that. And then last offseason, the Nas contract looks great now. Good work there. But like the Julius contract was a mistake. They could have had Nikhil instead of him if they wanted. And instead, they had to salary dump Julius. And again, it worked out. But that's kind of why I have Tim Connolly as my apex alpha, is because I think it's a good sign that after each mistake that they haven't doubled down on it and they've more or less fixed it or done their best to fix it. Like I mentioned with Rob, getting off of Rob for Io, who they've now signed to a 5-year contract, and then getting off Randle, and getting LaMelo. Obviously those separate deals, and Nas goes out as the main package there, but like all of these trades at least make a ton of sense and you've avoided the disaster potential. And now it's about making sure like it fits. It all works together. And that was going to be the case with anyone that's on the roster. So he's my he's my leader of the pack so far this
For sure.
offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I would have picked him if you didn't either. Is that like most national? Like, I feel like I've listened to so many podcasts since my baby's been alive, and that most national podcasters of voices, even of other teams, are really complimentary of Tim Connolly. Like, dude, like this is a guy that look win, lose or draw, he's gonna go for it. Like whether or not it has huge repercussions, whether he gets fired for his job. I mean, he said this in the postseason exit, press conference he had. Is that like, he, doesn't matter if he loses his job or not. I mean, might as well go for it, type of thing. And he's shown that all the time. And so I've seen people that really complimented him, not just because it's fun for them to cover a GM that goes for it, but that he's not, scared of like, trying to, I'm just gonna sit here. I don't want to lose my job. I'm just gonna kind of keep it going, whatever I can do to keep my job, because I loaded up on draft picks the next handful of years. I can just wait to cash those in. So.
Yep, awesome. All right, let's move on to Prey of the Week. My Prey this week, the luxury tax. Like I already mentioned, the Wolves will be in the luxury tax for the third straight season. Next season, if they are in it again, that'll be the repeater tax, and that'll be the real true test of where the ownership is at in terms of spending. But I think they deserve, at the very least, like I know I was ready to rip them if they were going to dodge the luxury tax, and instead they're in it for the third straight season. So if I'm going to rip them for potential, if I was going to rip them, I think I deserve on some level to give them props for spending money. Again, they don't deserve a party. They've made billions, I think, on this. Like they bought the Wolves for 1.5 billion, and they're worth like 3.5 now. So like you don't get any parties for spending what ends up being like $30 million in luxury tax. But you get what you deserve, which is an hour to a podcast. You get me saying, "Good job." That's the round of applause you get on that. But yeah, a good sign at the very least that the Wolves have dipped into the luxury tax again, especially given that they saw a move that they like and that the financials of it, the cash element of it, wasn't a hindrance.
Yeah, I saw some people talking about in my group chats about perhaps that's the best thing about having A-Rod as an owner is that he's afraid to look like the broke boy in the billionaires club. So he's like, no, you know what? Like, yes, maybe I want to cut costs, but I don't want to look bad. And he cares about his image too much, and so he'll spend. So yeah, it is interesting that the luxury tax thing appears to be a non-issue for these owners. I'm gonna say that my play of the week, Ryan, is millennial or older Wolves fans. So that includes myself. I'm a prime millennial in my late 30s now. And like I said, it was hard for me to want to accept LaMelo at first. The way he carries himself, like I talked about in the NBA draft when I kind of heard him talk, and the way he answered questions. He just seemed aloof. He seemed uninterested. I know it's like the whole tattoos and the way he dresses, the way that, he drives, whatever. But at this point, Ryan, I am what the kids call a cracked unk, nearing my 40s now. And I've kind of come to learn that, quote unquote, kids these days, including professional athletes, I mean, they move a lot differently than I do, or in ways that I would, or ways I would carry myself. And I have to be okay with that I can't expect them, that everyone's going to be, I don't know who, A plus, like a, media guys, maybe a Victor Wembanyama who's very carefully well thought out, worried about his water filters. Like, I don't think, younger guys care that much about that, not everyone's like him. And so I think that's okay. So I'm coming to grips with that. And so I think for some of us, older guys, or girls or whoever that are Wolves fans, we got to deal with it. We got to move forward. That there's going to be a much younger fan base that's going to be populating, especially on social media. For those of you who are unaware, the whole 6'7" thing that your nieces and nephews or whatever they do, that started because of LaMelo Ball. That was a LaMelo Ball meme. And so, yeah, that's going to come with them. And there's going to be a lot of TikTok edits of LaMelo Ball. There'll be a lot of annoying stands that come with them. But I would say he has perhaps the biggest fan base of any Wolves player that has ever donned a Wolves jersey, other than maybe rivaling a Derrick Rose, maybe rivaling a D'Angelo Russell. I think LaMelo's on a different level.
Yeah, it'll be weird. Wolves might be the most popular team with 12-year-olds, for better or worse. All right, let's move into our last segment, 2 words, and my 2 words are actually 2 words, or maybe they're Nas Reed, because I think as much as we like the LaMelo Ball trade, it does come at a cost, and from a fan base perspective, it's a gigantic cost. Again, it's not to say it wasn't worth it, but like Nas was a pillar of this Timberwolves fan base, in terms of just being a folk hero, an icon, really, between the towels, the tattoos, the everything. It was a big deal in Minnesota, and it's really tough to see him go. I'm excited to think about when the Hornets come to town and Nas is back in the building. I think similar to Cat returning or KG returning back in the day. I think it'll be at a similar level night. It'll be a really cool atmosphere. Probably just on first blush, like other than the KG jersey retirement, Nas coming back will be the biggest thing. So yeah, that's kind of almost setting aside. Like every time I think about this Wolves team, Nas pops in my head, and it's weird to see him. It'll be weird to see him not be on this team any longer.
Yeah, it is truly sad. I mean, I think Tim Connolly clearly is not going to be Timberwolves fans' favorite GM of all time or president of basketball operations of all time, unless they bring home a championship. I mean, they trade away Cat, trade away Nas, and within 3 years. I mean, that's tough, especially for fans. And again, I love Nas Reed as well too. He's always been pleasant to talk to in media availability. He's always just been a mainstay. He was here during our most recent dark days. And Ryan, I don't know if it's too late for us to pivot our podcast name. I mean, do we honor Nas by keeping it, or do you feel like it's probably too late for us to change it to, I don't know, like the 6-7 show or something?
I don't know. I've honestly thought about that for the off season. We'll keep it at least the same, and we'll see if we come up with something by the start of the season.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely shout out Nas Reed. My two words is ball in. It's a stupid pun on going all in. I think I would say I disagree with the premise that the Timberwolves have gone all in. That they have no more moves left to make. I understand that they don't have any more draft assets this current summer. They don't have that many more tradable players left on the team. But when you really look at it, I mean, say something breaks down in the Nuggets negotiations, and suddenly Nikola Jokic is refusing to sign an extension, and the Nuggets are entertaining trades for him. Then you're looking at guys like, okay, Rudy Gobert, you're available. Jaden McDaniels, you're available. Anything else that's TJ Shannon, everyone else, you're available. Like there's still players on the team that are available. And a year from now, LaMelo Ball will also be available if Jokic is on the trade block or if Wemby's on the trade block somehow. You're going to have draft picks next summer as well too. Just like we didn't have draft picks last year, we got extra draft picks this year, and every year we continue to get them out. So, but that said, again, I understand my two words is ball in because I do feel like this is a brave pivot that Tim Connelly is going. And what I mean by ball in is that asset-wise, it means that the direction that the Wolves are planning to play basketball moving forward, that they're not going to go huge and go, all right, we're just going to draft a couple more 7-foot teenagers to battle Wemby. It's like, no, maybe we got to zag when the rest of the league is zigging and trying to get big. So, they're banking on playmakers who can create threes for themselves and others off the dribble and catch and shoot, play fast. And yeah, that's going to be, I think, exciting, if not anything else, for Wolves fans to watch this upcoming year, that will have less post-up basketball by Julius Randle and Nas Reed and lose the ball driving into 10 guys with poor floor spacing out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think at least in the short term, this is at the top of the roster what the team is going to be. I would not expect in the next couple seasons to see a major shakeup. Obviously, down the roster, we're still looking for a power forward where they'll look for next summer. There'll be plenty of things to talk about and worry about, but this is what this team will be for a little bit, and ideally, if it works out even longer than that, financially, this should be sustainable for a long time. Really like the Ant LaMelo, Jaden core, and Io there. Those top four should be sustainable for a long time. And next summer, it'll be about what to do with Rudy, what to do with Dante's expiring contract, assuming he's still here, how to round out the contract. Depends how Shannon plays. He could be a staple of the rotation. He could be someone you're looking to move on from. But at the top of the roster, this is going to be what this team is, and I think we're just excited to see what it looks like, although we still have a couple more months of waiting. At least in a couple weeks here, we'll get to see Berenger and Isaiah Evans and Rocco Sikorsky play some Vegas Summer League basketball. But Leo, any more thoughts before we head out?
No, I would say my only other thoughts is watch some Lynx basketball. They're number one in the league right now. We love our women's basketball here. Olivia Miles is must-see TV, or if you're there in Minnesota, must-see action live. And yeah, it's just been really fun to follow that team, where I can as well too, in between feeding baby and doing laundry and all that. So yeah, it's been exciting. We're in summertime now, and there's clearly going to be more moves by the Wolves. And hopefully Nafisa Collier will be back soon, hopefully this week, for the Lynx, and we shall see.
Yeah, Lynx best record in the league, and they haven't had Fee or Dorka play a single minute. So
yeah,
the reinforcements are coming, and yeah, Lynx basketball should be fun. Maybe next week we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll see if there's any more moves the Wolves make, but I'm not sure. Again, the rest of the offseason is going to be pretty touch and go with podcasts and planning. So, but generally the plan, at least for me, is to go once a week. Leo's still kind of, we'll call it paternity leave here. Who knows? Again, no plan moving forward. I will be going out to Summer League in about 2 weeks from now, so we'll see if I do any content from out there, but plan to do some sort of show next week, and if they sign a power forward or trade for whatever, obviously we'll do something sooner. But for Leo, I'm Ryan. Thank you everyone for listening.
Get home, drive safe.
Go Wolves.
Ayoo!